Mà cái tôn trọng đó là phải được sư phụ nha. Nếu như người nào tự biên tự diễn là cái điều đó không phù hợp.
Welcome again, friends, to the R3 Academy for Couples. What a great class we've got lined up for you.
In this session, we will focus on the following areas: avoiding cool talk and changing behaviors, not your partner. As in every session, let's get ready with our workshops, and away we go.
Welcome to session 4 of World-Class Relationships for Work and Home. In this session, we will cover Pillar 7, Avoiding Cool Talk, Pillar 8, Changing Behaviors, Not Your Partner. And embedded within this pillar, we will cover the confrontation cycle, as well as XYC messages. Let's go ahead and get started. We know that cool talk can be really damaging and dangerous in both our love relationships as well as the ones that we establish at work. So we strongly recommend that you avoid them. Let's go ahead and talk about what it is and the different types that we know about. There are two kinds of cool talk. The first is simply the current youth culture slang, and we hear it all around us in movies, in shows, throughout social media. Let me go ahead and walk you through some of the examples that we are referring to. When you hear somebody say, "Yeah, right," really what they're trying to fully explain is that they think something is absurd. You can also hear the very popular expression with teenagers, "Whatever," usually accompanied with the rolling of the eyes. And what they're implying is, if you chose already, then it isn't even worth arguing about. We know what these things mean because, again, it's all around us in social media, in our daily interactions, and a lot of the times these type of expressions can get normalized, and we begin to feel like it is appropriate to utilize them. But let's go ahead and take a look at why we know these are damaging and why we truly need to avoid them. The second kind of cool talk is irony and sarcasm. Irony is simply saying the opposite of what you truly mean, and it is usually done with the intention of having a humorous effect. It can sound like, "Well, don't you look special today?" Or, "I hope you're happy with yourself." A very common one with parents is, "Thanks so much, you were a great help." In reality, we know that the opposite is implied. Sarcasm is irony, but in this case, it is also done with heavy mockery, and ridicule and contempt are included in some of these expressions. An example of this can be, "Just a little innocent gift you got for your boss for her birthday, huh?" It implies completely the opposite, and it is done with contempt. We know that these types of expressions are there to serve a purpose. Let's talk about what those purposes are. But again, we want to walk you through why they are so damaging and why we want to resort to different types of communication skills to get our needs met instead. Let's go ahead and cover 4 of the main reasons why we utilize cool talk. Like all behavior, it is done to meet one or more needs. So sometimes it can be done simply to feel accepted, especially by younger adults or teenagers. It can be done to feel that acceptance from their peers, to differentiate themselves from their parents, and also to feel sophisticated. Adults, on the other hand, can use it to feel with it, like, I still get you and I still understand you. It also can be used to avoid revealing personal feelings, which would make us feel too vulnerable or committed. And it can maintain a self-distance. Finally, it is often used to inject humor and a sense of fun into a conversation. But why do we say that it is damaging? There are also many drawbacks to cool talk when it is used in an inappropriate situation. It can sound hostile and ambiguous. Its meaning is very dependent on the entire context. And so the potential for misinterpretation and misunderstanding is really high. And we don't want this, especially when we are in a tense situation. It is also susceptible to be taken literally. And in those cases, the damage can be profound. It sounds detached and it lacks warmth. And again, we don't want this, especially in those relationships that we want to nourish and maintain. It may be interpreted as hurtful mockery when we take it to the level of sarcasm with contempt. It also, because of this, has a very high potential for hurt. It truly can damage relationships. In meaningful conversations, cool talk's ambiguity and hostility can cause serious emotional damage to a relationship or cause you to be seen by your boss as a goof-off or even worse, as a troublemaker that cannot be counted upon, and they won't take your job seriously. We all know someone like this. And if you do, you know that when you're in a room with them, you don't want to be at the other end of their stings. So for these and many other reasons, it is important to avoid it. Let's continue exploring some of the pros and cons of cool talk. And to do this, let's once again really go in depth into the characteristics so that we learn how to recognize it and avoid it. The characteristics are, it's something that makes us feel like we're with it, or in reverse, our teenagers or young adults can be trying to be a part of the culture. It's ambiguous. It's also ironic. Remember, it is saying things that actually have the opposite meaning. It is cool and detached, and so it creates distance and separation in the relationship. It is considered unprofessional slang. The speaker often feels safe and protected, and we know, however, that in safe situations, cool talk can be fun, but it can sometimes be tricky to distinguish when those situations are, so be very mindful. What are some of the problems? Well, as we were sharing, it can lead to a lot of misunderstandings, emotional distance. Some reactions from those around us can be hurt feelings, put downs, and feeling pushed away. That is in the context of our home. But some possible work reactions can also be our coworkers can begin to isolate us, or we can begin to isolate ourselves when we use that type of language. It can offend others, including our bosses and leaders, and it can even offend the people that we are trying to serve, such as customers. Let's close this pillar with a recap. Cool talk can make the speaker feel superior and safe. Results of too much cool talk can be devastating. And remember, it is often very difficult to distinguish when it is appropriate or when the other person is ready and open to have that type of interaction with us. It can create misunderstandings and emotional distance in all of our relationships. When there are harsh tones and contempt, we know based on Gottman's research that these are two high predictors of divorce. Above all, keep in mind that cool talk is inherently cool. And what we mean is it's not a type of skill or dynamic that is going to bring warmth and closeness into the relationship, which is exactly what we want for those that we care. So for these reasons and many others, we truly want to avoid cool talk when possible. Let's talk about pillar number 8, changing behaviors, not your partner. Everybody wants to change some things about the people in their lives, whether it's someone at work or at home. It is a normal wish. It truly is normal to wish some things about our partner were different. We're all separate human beings with our own characteristics, habits, flaws, and in the close proximity of life at work and home, these differences are bound to cause friction. It is only a matter of time before your needs begin to interfere with my needs. How we deal with these behaviors is critical to the success of our relationships. Let's go ahead and look further into this pillar. The way most people go about dealing with unwanted behaviors usually doesn't go very well. Too often, common ways people do this is by demanding that the behavior changes. You need to do this, period, because I said so, right? We also can resort to criticizing, accusing, and even blaming others, right? Well, we're in this mess because of you, so now you figure it out. You fix it. We can also threaten retaliation. If you continue to behave that way when we're at my parents' house, you wait and you're gonna see how I'm gonna behave when we go over to your mother's. Using sarcasm, shaming, other means of making the other person feel wrong or bad is another form that we often try to get them to change. And shaming someone in particular can be damaging in a very profound way. And I'll talk about that more as we go further into this pillar. But the results of some of these typical ways to get others to change truly results in resistance, defensiveness, a lot of anger, stress, and a breakdown in the relationship. So how do we get behavior change, right? We are going to introduce the XYZ message, which is considered a soft start. And it is a tool that can truly increase the likelihood that the other person is going to want to cooperate with you and actually implement changes. When your partner, friend, or colleague's behavior annoys or hurts you, tell him how his behavior affects you, as well as the feelings that you experience as a result. Such self-disclosure is very effective in producing change in the behaviors that cause you distress or those that interfere with your needs without getting lots of resistance from your partner. That's the key, lowering the resistance. When you can supply empathy and acceptance in your relationship with those around you, you can also always supply genuineness. And this pillar teaches you how to do that in situations that could otherwise cause a lot of problems. If you are upset, if you are frustrated, we want you to feel comfortable and equipped to be able to share this with those around you. This program does not want you to numb, suppress, ignore, or pretend that things are always going to go okay. That is not reality, and it is not what we want you to take away. So let's go ahead and look at a very strategic and effective formula that allows us to be both empathetic and accepting and yet genuine when something is truly bothering us. Here's the formula. The X is a simple, non-blameful description of the behavior. We want to stick to the facts of what we are seeing, and we want to avoid any judgment, any criticism, or adding any opinions in this section of the formula. Again, it is just a straightforward, non-blameful description of the behavior. The Y, as the letter implies, is the tangible impact that this behavior is having on me. And what are some examples of that? Is it having an impact on my time? Is it having an impact on my overall health and my stress? Is it having an impact on my finances? These are just some examples, but we will expand on these a lot more. And finally, the last letter of the formula requires that we open up about how we're feeling. And this is the part that allows us to be genuine. Oftentimes, we start off with our feelings, right? I am so upset that you did this, this, and this. This formula truly does require that we meditate on those and leave them for the end. So XYZ message is an I message versus a you message. We're going to continue teaching you how to develop an XYZ message, and we're going to give you lots of opportunities to practice. Let's move ahead with XYZ. Why are XYZ messages so successful? XYZ messages avoid harsh starts. What do we mean by harsh starts? Blaming. Expressions like, it's your fault the report is going to be late. You dropped the ball. Criticism. No wonder you can't find anything in here. Look at your room. It's a mess. You're such a slob. And grilling. So what's your excuse this time? You always have an excuse. Those are very common examples of harsh starts, and XYZ messages allow us to avoid that. They are, as I was sharing earlier, soft starts. XYZ messages, because of this, do tend to produce a reduced defensiveness, and they also prevent escalation. Let's go ahead and go over the formula in more detail. The X is a non-blameful description of the behavior. You are simply sharing the facts. And you want to adapt this to your own voice and style of speaking. But an example of this can be when you leave your dirty dishes in the sink. And that's it. I do not need to add anything else. Remember, we're avoiding any blame, any grilling, any criticism. I am just sticking to describing the behavior and what it is that I'm seeing. When you leave your dirty dishes in the sink, and I am done with my ex, then the why is the reason, right? And we can sit with this one. In the beginning, it might be a little bit difficult to think in terms of what is the true tangible impact, not my feelings. I'll get to those later. But how is this impacting me? A simple example of that can be, then I have to clean the sink before I can make my own lunch. And I only have 30 minutes. That's it, right? You are letting them know that you have to be the one taking time away from your limited lunch in order to clean up what it is that they left behind. In that case, you are done with the why. And now it is time to move on with the Z, which are your feelings. Sitting with it, truly identifying what is this triggering inside of me, and then naming it. And it can be, once again, a very straightforward sentence. I feel irritated and resentful about having to use my lunchtime this way. If they reply defensively, make a quick switch to power listening until they feel understood. Once they have felt understood, they may volunteer a helpful behavior change. I know that this is particularly hard to do because you are giving them the gift of empathy and giving them the space to feel understood, when in reality, you are the one who's having a tangible impact, and it may feel like it should be them holding the space for you this way. But remember, what we are trying to do is to lower the tension and the temperature of the argument to help them move away from the emotional part of the brain and into the problem-solving part of the brain, right? The frontal and executive center, which actually carries empathy. Once they can move out of their own defensiveness, then they will be much more capable to give that empathy right back to you. And this is where we begin to see that cooperation, the openness, the thoughtful implementation of how can we go about getting your needs met, as well as mine. If, however, the defensiveness continues after you've power listened to them 1 to 2 times, you can alternate between self-disclosure and, again, power listening to create this mutual understanding and respect and hopefully bring about a helpful outcome. You may need to continue using this alternation, non-blameful self-disclosure, then power listening to their defensive response until they feel understood. Then back to your original XYZ message, and so on and so forth. This process is what we call the confrontation cycle. I also want to note that a lot of the times, as you're power listening, you will be able to hear that defensive response is an attempt on their end to demonstrate and relay to you that they're not such a bad person. That defensive response in the example that we use can be something like, I only had 15 minutes for a lunch. They overscheduled me and my previous meeting ran long, and I'm just really stressed out with some of the dynamics at work, and I'm struggling. That's why I left a mess in the kitchen. There can be many forms of defensive responses, but again, listen attentively. And oftentimes what the person is really wanting to share is, I didn't mean to hurt you. I'm not such a bad person. So when we power listen to that and they are able to feel heard and understood themselves, they can begin to problem solve empathically with us as well. Let's review what the confrontation cycle looks like. Step number 1, you're going to confront with an XYZ message. And remember, this is self-disclosure. It is considered an I message. Step number 2, you are going to power listen to that defensive response until you notice that your partner's or coworker's emotional temperature is lowered. And you can do this by tuning into their tone of voice, looking at their body language, just like power listening requires. Step number 3, you're going to resend, if needed, a modified XYZ message. And most likely, you're going to have to power listen again as that temperature and defensiveness begins to get lower. And finally, step number 5, if your colleague and partner begins to initiate change, then wonderful. You can begin to take the steps to implement the changes that you both want to see. If they don't, however, go ahead and move into win-win problem solving. I highly recommend that you read Case Study Self-Disclosure followed by Power Listening, found on page 29 of your workbook. Let's go ahead and complete the XYZ self-disclosure exercise. Here are the directions for this partner exercise. Fill in the pages in your workbook. Find a partner and choose who is A and who is B. Partner A, share your XYZ message. Partner B, respond how most people would. And then partner A, power listen and then resend your XYZ. Repeat until mutual understanding is reached. You may begin. XYZ messages are a better way to confront. These messages allow you to express how a behavior affects you. It'll also allow you to share your feelings, and I mean all of your feelings regarding this experience and what this behavior is causing within you. Being genuine when upset is important. And even when we are experiencing uncomfortable emotions, XYZ messages further allow us to maintain an empathic response as well as one of acceptance. We're not blaming, we're not judging, we're not criticizing. We are simply presenting how their needs and behaviors are interfering with ours. This type of soft start increases the likelihood that the other person will not feel as resistance. It is a self-disclosure. We're talking about things that are going on inside of us. This lowers the tension as we begin to work through the conflict resolution cycle, and it will increase the likelihood that the person will want to cooperate and implement change. let's go ahead and talk about the iceberg concept. Anger is often considered a secondary emotion. For some people, it's the one they get in touch most quickly. When you send an XYZ message, if the feeling you often find yourself expressing is anger, this is an opportunity to look underneath, to see if there are other emotions, weaker, more vulnerable ones such as fear, embarrassment, sadness, regret, hurt, or anything else that are harder to get in touch with and harder to acknowledge. If you can share those feelings, the more vulnerable ones, it may be easier for the other person to respond caringly to you when you share a problem you are having. It increases your genuineness, and it can increase the sense of closeness in your work relationships and intimacy in your relationships at work. Go ahead and take the time to study this graph and the list of emotions, the more vulnerable ones, the more uncomfortable ones. If you develop an XYZ message and you do recognize that anger is the one that you get in touch with most often, take the time to include the difficult ones in your XYZ messages. This practice will not only increase your own self-awareness, but as we were sharing, it will also increase closeness and the ability to produce empathy and genuineness in the relationship. How we deal with other people's behaviors is critical to the success of our relationships. Use the XYZ message to share your feelings. Utilize the confrontation cycle as needed. Remember, you present with a soft start, which is the XYZ message. Then you power listen to that defensive response, and you reintroduce your XYZ message, modified if necessary. Repeat until mutual understanding is reached. This pillar increases the chance that the other person will be a lot more willing to change the behavior that is unacceptable to you.
At this point of the course, you have learned 8 of the 16 pillars. You're halfway there. How do you feel?
Our hope is that as you learn these valuable skills and as you implement them in your relationships, you will notice a change. It may be subtle at first, but as you continue to learn and put them into practice, what you're learning, that change will become more apparent.
Your relationships will begin to flourish and grow. That's the goal. In today's sessions, we've added another tool for your relationship toolbox that will only enhance and improve your relationships. Learning to use the X, Y, and Z message has been a game changer for so many people.
You now have learned to express how a loved one's behavior affects you, but in a much more healthy way. Gone are the screams and fits of anger. Gone are the excruciatingly long fights. That is now replaced with a better method to express your dissatisfaction with someone's behavior in a way that won't make them want to fight you.
The X, Y, and Z method is indeed a game changer. I encourage you to practice it and use it as often as possible. Again, keep the great work, practice those skills, and we'll see you next time.